Hi, I'm Michael, and this is California. And today, it can kind of feel like we are in a disaster sandwich. We have the pandemic on one side, we have civil unrest on the other side, and we still have 40 million Americans who have applied for unemployment benefits, but up to 1/3 of them who have not yet gotten any of the benefits they have applied for. In addition to the fact that many of the extended benefits for unemployment are going to expire by July 31st. So today we're going to talk about why so many Americans have not yet gotten their benefits, as well as what does the prospective future for unemployment look like past July 31st, both Democrat and Republican. Now, if you like this information, if you find it interesting, if you find it useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. All right, so first let's talk about unemployment. So right now there's around $214 billion worth of unemployment claims that should be out there paid out to Americans. But unfortunately, only $147 billion of those claims have been paid out, which leaves around $67 billion left over of money that should have been in the pockets of Americans, but is not. So that's about 1/3 of all the folks who applied for unemployment benefits. Now, there's a couple reasons why this has happened, primarily because of the unemployment agencies across the United States have old and aged and decrepit systems for getting unemployment benefits paid out. One is their computer systems. So their computer systems, many of them are still operating on computers from the 80s, essentially Atari level computers, which are great for Space Invaders, but are not so great for figuring out how to get unemployment out to the people. Additionally, they've faced a lot of funding cuts in the last couple of years. While unemployment claims had been really low, it means that they got less money, as well as they brought on less staff, which means that now there's a huge influx of Americans who are applying as a result of the pandemic. They just don't have the resources to really process all those claims as fast and as soon as they really should. And this is really an example of what happens when you have budget cuts as well as financial procrastinations for upgrades that are affecting Americans right now when they should be getting money, but they are not. Now, in defense of the unemployment agencies, they are saying they are hiring at a frantic pace, albeit a little bit slower because of the pandemic. But the question is there going to be enough people to help out process all these unpaid claims before it's too late, before Americans really get hurt by not having the resources they need in a time when they actually need it? So yet a bigger question becomes, what's going to happen to unemployment after July 31st? So after the end of July, when most of the protections from the CARES Act and the extensions begin to end. And there's a couple proposals, like always, from the Democratic side as well as from the Republican side. So we'll talk about the Democrat side first. Now, first there was the HEROES Act, which was this giant, all-encompassing $3.3 trillion bill, but has basically been DOA by the Senate. They've been dubbed saying that this bill will never pass. And what it did have extensions for unemployment up until 2021, for the end of this year and into next year. But that one being basically nixed by the Republican Senate means that there are opportunities for bills like the Work Relief and Security Act, which has a little bit more tempered approach to getting unemployment to Americans. What it would essentially do would tack unemployment amounts to unemployment percentages, so the rate of folks who are unemployed. So as an example, for example, if the unemployment rate stays above 7.5%, it would mean that people who are on unemployment would get $450 per week for 13 weeks, and then it would drop down to $300 for the rest of the time. Now, once unemployment drops down to 7.5% or below, then it would bring the amount of money folks would get weekly down to $350 per week for 13 weeks, and then drop it down to $200, up until the point where unemployment drops to 5.5%, in which it would be cut off. So it's not an instant cut, it's a little bit of a gradation down, which kind of makes sense. As the unemployment rate drops, people should get less benefits because they actually do have a higher likelihood of getting back to work. Now, of course, there could be some problems with this. One is that it could be very cyclical. So, for example, folks are not going back to work because they're getting more unemployment benefits, but they're getting more unemployment benefits because they're not going back to work. So it could be a circle like that, or even have a little bit of a disincentive for folks not to get back to work as fast as maybe Republicans would like them to do. But I think that overall, it seems like a pretty fair approach where it's not a guaranteed blank check for in perpetuity to get unemployment benefits, but also it still helps folks out as the unemployment rate drops down. They still get a little bit less money and kind of gently nudges them to get back into the workforce. So let's talk about the Republican solutions for unemployment. And as you can imagine, a lot of these perspectives and the proposals are really going to be geared to try to get folks back to work sooner rather than later. So the first one we'll talk about is from Rob Portman, a Republican from Oregon, who is talking about having a $450 check for everyone who goes back to work up until July 31st. So not only would you keep the money from your work, but you get the $450 additionally every week up till July 31st. The next one is a proposal where you get a lump sum of $6,000, which is $600 times 10 weeks, but brought out all at once in one big lump sum paid out, so that people can utilize the money and then realize once it runs out, they have to get back to work. So there's a deadline on it rather than having unemployment in perpetuity like a lot of the Democratic proposals have. Now, obviously, there's going to be some big problems with this. One is that Americans are not known for being great money managers as well as being great savers. So if someone got a lump sum for $6,000, presumably it could be gone very quickly, especially if there's a lot of past due bills that have been neglected over the last couple of weeks or months. In addition to the fact that they might buy something that's really expensive and basically leave them in a situation where they're no better off after a week or so or a month or so than they were previously, because all that money is gone. And if there's no jobs, they can't go back to work either way. Additionally, with the employment bonus, it could encourage really experienced employees to go back to work and take jobs that they are actually overqualified for, leaving a lot of the less experienced individuals or new entrants into the economy, like people who graduated from high school or college, basically without any job options, because all the more experienced workers have already taken those jobs. And on the other hand, it would also take away from those experienced workers who should be doing more skilled, more difficult, more complex, and more productive jobs, but are not doing them because they've taken these cheaper jobs because they had to get back to work. Now, overall, both solutions, Democrat and Republican, it's great to see that they're trying to figure out how to get more money into the pockets of Americans. And both of them are seeming to do that. They want to get more money into the pockets of Americans, but it's really 6 in one hand and a half dozen the other. It just matters on what perspective you have on how to actually get the economy back going here in America. So ultimately, the question is, what is the best solution for this unemployment situation, especially up till the deadline of July 31st, when a lot of the protections and extensions from the CARES Act end? And I think that overall, I side a little bit more with the proposal where it's tagged to the unemployment rate. So as we can see, as the employment rate goes down, then people get less benefits. And I think that's good because it will encourage folks to get back to work, because they'll see as everyone else is getting back to work, they'll get back to work, and actuality show that they have the ability to get back to work because people are getting back to work, but also doesn't give them so much money that they can't go back to work. They don't want to go back to work. They don't need to go back to work. So having that ability to change it based on the percentage of unemployment seems like the most reasonable solution. Now, obviously, I don't make any of these laws, so we'll have to see what actually comes through and what Congress can agree on. But to me, in my thinking, that is the one that seems most reasonable to try to help past July 31st. Thank you so much for watching our video. I hope that you enjoyed it and you found it interesting and maybe even found it helpful. And if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. Also, if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. We love to see your comments and questions, and we'll make a new video or a new post to go over them as soon as we can. Now, also, we here at California, we know health insurance. So whether it's private health insurance or Covered California or Medicare or Medicaid or Medi-Cal or even health insurance for a small group, we know health insurance. So if you have questions about those, you can leave those down below and we'll make a new video and post for those as well. Now, other than that, I am Michael, and this is California, wishing you a happy, healthy day.